Welcome to the 25th episode of Authenticity FM. I'm Corey Spiegel, and I'm grateful to be joined by my friends and co-hosts, Phil Corrali and Mike Sable. We've been talking for months about the fourth turning and the slow erosion of community, about things still functioning, but not feeling especially sturdy. So many leaders we know are still showing up, still doing the work, and quietly wondering why everything feels so much harder than it used to. In this episode, we're starting a conversation about resilience, not in terms of toughness or endurance, but the thing that helps you stay oriented in a long season filled with change. So if you're wondering how funhouse mirrors, a 4-foot barn fan, inside out, a tilt-a-whirl, Lauren Tashis, and a surgical tape roll all fit together, stick around. So if you've been listening with us, you know this has been building for a while. What we're seeing right now isn't just disruption, it's also distortion. It's harder to tell what's real and what's just exaggerated, what deserves urgency and what's just noise and anxiety talking. And it's showing up everywhere. It's showing up in how leaders make decisions and how teams are reacting and how exhausting it feels to just keep pace with what's supposed to be normal. Resilience isn't about pretending nothing touched you. It's about understanding what actually holds in a season like this and what needs to be let go of carefully. That's where we're headed tonight.
So I have so many questions. I don't even know where to begin. I think you maybe have to walk us through that little introduction again. So I heard funhouse mirrors, I heard fans. Phil, what did you hear?
Well, the one thing that jumped out at me. See, so there's a little authenticity right there. The thing that jumped out,
That has to stay in the podcast, please.
that's staying
No!
in. Do not
No.
edit that out. Do not edit that out. So Corey kept talking about this elusive thing called normal. I'm not exactly sure what normal is supposed to be. I don't know that normal has ever really been in our vernacular overall. I think it's always been a weird whatever. But you kept saying what is normal, and we're not feeling like things are normal. I don't know that I felt like things are normal for a long time, but I'm curious about what that feeling is supposed to be. Just that the comfortable thing that we know, or is it something else altogether?
So I don't have a good definition of normal. But I would say the way that I live life now, which is different and is probably a reaction to chaos and change, is that every day when the weather's good, which thankfully it's starting to move in that direction, I walk the dogs. That for me is normal. They're just those little things. Reading books, that was one of the things I wanted to more consciously do this year. It's not a New Year's resolution. It's more of a strategic investment. Mike, when you and I talk often, I say you are how you spend your time. And I want to read more and a lot of eclectic things. So on Kindle, I think I read 7 books in January. And I listened to 2 more on Audible. And then I've got a paper book I'm reading. And so that was an investment of how I wanted normal to feel. You guys are back to your Yetis. And that is something very normal about what happens when we film the podcast. And so I think it's how you anchor, we'll call it non-anxiety, how you anchor peace, joy, happiness, whatever those things are in your daily life in a way that you can control.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. As you guys were talking, I kept thinking the word that just resonated with me was like simple, right? It didn't require a ton of thinking and complexity, right? So our jobs feel like they're more complicated, right? I will say, right? So I work in Minnesota, and so the last couple of weeks and months have been pretty chaotic if you've watched sort of the news. And so nothing feels like it's simple. Everything feels like it's really complicated. And so these little things that can be grounding little touch points are super helpful, whether it's the way you brew your coffee or the way that you get sun and go for a walk or kind of the way you tackle problems. So I think this is a timely topic because I think the world is pretty spinning pretty fast. And so this, right, it's not going to be normal, but like these things that can ground and simplify are probably pretty helpful. Something else that you sort of said was like this, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but the anxiety levels that people are feeling, like you can sort of see it on the faces of some people in our profession. And so I think we should probably wrestle with that a little bit because I think that's one of those resilience strategies. Because you're right, it's not about being tough and grinding through, it's about sort of weaving through. And so I don't know, maybe I probably shared too much, but we'll kind of dive into that over the course of the episode.
Well, and I want to touch on, Corey. I think I appreciate your definition of normal, and I think it is aspirational some days for normal, right? And I think when we're navigating a series of questions, we're navigating a series sometimes of existential ones. The one thing that you perhaps can rely on is the thing that happens at the end of the day, or the thing that happens first in the day, right? Where you will go home. In my case, I go home, we make dinner, we try to eat dinner in a relatively reasonable amount of time. And then it's a mad dash to bedtime. And like there's 47 different things happening. But that's the most normal my day can be. And then the girls are asleep and Lindsay and I sit and watch Homeland or something. And that's normal. Like that's the routine because there's so much abnormal in the rest of my day that I don't feel like I'm in a normal state. And that's why I asked the question. I think what we're working our way through right now is work has always been abnormal, but I don't know that it's ever been quite so abnormal as it is right now. And it's tying back to your point of the things that you relied on, you can't rely on. The things that you understood, you can't understand. The things that made sense no longer do. And so as you are trying to help, right, whether it's your community, whether it's your staff, whether it's your board, whatever it is, you're trying to do so, as we were talking before on what's the bouncy ball thing called?
The Pogo ball.
The Pogo ball.
Yeah.
We're on the Pogo ball. We're on that Pogo ball, right? And so it's freaking exhausting. It's not kind of tiring. It's not sort of a little bit overwhelming. It's all of that, all of the time. And it's drinking from the fire hose of anxiety and drinking from the fire hose of who the hell knows what to do next. Mike, you jested about this last episode. And I think when we're talking about this, we don't know what we're doing all the time. We don't have the path. We don't have the clarity of purpose that perhaps we had at one point. And so what we're struggling with is finding that balance and trying to do it again tomorrow and again and again and next month and next month and next month, right? And so the normal right now from a professional standpoint is that it is exhausting, at least for me. And I think that's true certainly for you, Mike. And Corey, I think you're more exhausted by it than perhaps you let on because you're still living it through us in helping us through it. So like, is that the new, I hate that term. Is that the new normal, right? Ugh, what a terrible, terrible way of saying that.
So I think in some ways, and I've been reflecting on this a lot, I had my professional rupture 2.5 years ago now. And I went through something very distinct, very unique. It's not widespread like everything that's happening now or COVID. It was very isolated and very hard. And I went through it fairly alone. I mean, I did have some of the network, but it wasn't like this, when you guys talk about meeting with your networks, it's kind of that everybody has it on your face. That's how it was for me and my team. But outside of our sandbox, so to speak, everybody else was normal, right? Like we're talking 22, 23, and comparatively, life was pretty not bad at that point. And because I survived it, right? So Lauren Tarshis, I Survived series. We have the whole collection of this, both the chapter book version and the graphic novel version, which are super cool. I just grabbed one, and by luck had it. I grabbed the American Revolution, which is 250 years ago this year. And so I thought that was a fun synchronicity. But I feel like because I went through it and I survived it, I'm in a different space than you guys are. And so like that is my gift, is to be able to talk to people and take on that burden, because I know eventually it will resolve itself. Now, is it going to resolve itself in a way that today you're like, oh, that's how this happy ending works? Nope. Absolutely not. Can you control a lot of it right now? Nope. But the looser you hold on to, like this is the loosening the grip moment, and the more you trust in your own morals and the ethics of the profession and the goodness of humanity to prevail, even in what are dark times, the other side will come. And you will both find the peace that I feel very blessed to have now on my daily basis, as will many people in this profession. It's not going to come without scars. Like that's just life. But it will get better. And I think, in my own work, hope and optimism, right? I found it. It was a journey to get there, though.
Well, I was just fascinated to see a copy of the I Survived series. So if anybody who has sort of children of a certain age, like those are staple like chapter books. They're just a great way to get kids to be interested in reading, sneak in a little bit of learning, sneak in a little bit of understanding kind of how the world works. So I appreciate seeing the I Survived series. It's also sort of a helpful reminder that we always survive, right? In all of the turnings and all of the chaos and all of the things like, right, throughout the 250 years of American history, there have been some pretty traumatic things, and we've always sort of overcome them. So maybe that little bit of like, yeah, well, we'll get through this eventually too, is a kind of an important reminder for folks, I hope.
All right. So back to the list. We covered Lauren Tarshis. So we have Funhouse Mirrors, which I think is a good spot to go next. So do you remember either going to Wisconsin Dells? They had like a really great one in Wisconsin Dells, or kind of any carnival where you can go into the Funhouse of Mirrors.
Can
And
I
when
just
you're
say, I have lived in the Midwest my whole life. My whole life.
Oh,
I have been to the Wisconsin Dells 0 times. So I may have to give my Midwesterner card
wow.
back, but I just want to point that out.
I'm going to offer that there is a spring break in your future. It is a
Yeah.
short drive away. It is
He's
a life-changing experience.
going to very warm California,
I'm going
though.
warm places for spring break.
Go.
We'll go to the Dells in the summer. That sounds good. I'll put it on my list.
It's a chlorine-laced, it's like an acid trip just with chlorine. It's amazing. You got to go.
Perfect. Well, that sounds great for the summer. It's on my list. I just
shocked.
wanted to,
like with all of your Disney trips, and you've never done the Dells.
I
also
don't know
just
what
have
to tell you.
I also
I
have
do
to
feel
say,
guilty about it.
right?
So.
If you've not been to the Circus World Museum in Baraboo, there's a song that's about it. You've got it's a road trip song. And just
I'm jotting notes.
Take
I'm
notes.
jotting notes.
So for all our listening friends from Wisconsin, specifically kind of that Madison area, send Phil all of the must-dos and build the itinerary for him, because he's locked into this adventure
Okay.
now.
I also just want to say, when I go to Wisconsin, which is not infrequent, my favorite zoo anywhere is the Milwaukee Zoo. I always get made fun of because I'm from Illinois. So stop doing that, and maybe I'll show up more frequently. Maybe?
I mean, I live in Iowa, and I still make fun of you for being from Illinois. So, but anyway,
It's a
Okay.
burden we must bear.
Funhouse mirrors.
So when you're a kid, it's just this novel thing. But if you kind of picture it in your head right now, you're like, ugh, everything is so distorted. I don't like that angle of myself. I don't like what's reflecting back. And so I think that's a really good analogy for what life looks like right now is everything's distorted. I mean, when I scroll LinkedIn during the day, it's fairly easy to tell what's not real, but it's getting harder. Videos you watch on YouTube, like we are definitely blurring the line between reality and not. And I think that makes it harder to get grounded, which is why I think there's such an attraction to yoga, walking, books, right? Because I know this thing's real. And how do you know what to trust when you're not even sure what you're looking at is real?
Are we supposed to answer that question? Good, because there's no answer. There really isn't. I mean, because it is really hard to discern sort of this, like, okay, I hear this thing, or right, and it's often like often things like I'm not even seeing it, but someone brings it to me and they say, "Oh, I saw this thing," and that means we have to have this kind of response. And I like everything I have is sort of like the red flags, like, whoa, 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 what did you see? Where was it? Who was the source? Like trying to pause and create some time to kind of reflect on what it is. Because I think the other thing is when we have all this distortion, we have this like immediate need to sort of respond to something. And so, and I have to catch myself all the time, just like, okay, is this really happening? Is this really what's going on? And we are not rewarded by being patient. We're not rewarded by being cautious. And I'm actually guilty of the overreaction in a lot of things. But I think that is the part about resilience that we have to kind of build in is this pausing mechanism to really discern what is the real thing, what is the root cause of it. And so I think that's maybe one of the professional challenges that we have to kind of wrestle with in our conversation over the next couple of weeks.
So I think the problem of distortion is a long time one, right? That's not actually new. Maybe the way things are distorted is new, and whether it's an AI generated image or it's something that's not quite as it seems because somebody has forgotten a series of facts in a social media post, that's not new. And I think the struggle we've always had is not to do the overreaction because you it, it feels right in the moment when you overreact. You know, somebody calls you and says, "Oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened and it's happening on my street and you don't care and nobody cares and property values will tank and children will die and this is all your fault." And so the immediate reaction in that moment is because they've checked all the boxes and they've ticked off all of the things in the list on your brain about we have to do something, is stopping and saying, do I have to do something? And I think it's really perhaps not in the way that our DNA is wired to stop and think sometimes because we're helpers. We're doers, problem solvers. We come up with it and we say, this is I have to do this so you feel better. And you don't always have to do it so you feel better because you're not really sure that it's real. And you have to be careful about discerning that distortion of reality that often happens. And I don't blame people in our communities who over respond because I think it's like when you think something's going to work a certain way and it doesn't, and it's really disappointing and it's really frustrating and it hurts your sensibilities. And people don't have a lot of margin to give on that thing. And so I do try to give my community a little bit of grace in that, and my staff a little bit of grace in that, and myself a little bit of grace in that. But we still, even with all that grace giving, have to take a beat and say, all right, what do we have to do here? Not what do we feel like we should do so we feel better here. It's what do we actually have to do? And I think that's the real challenge of this time, of where we are right now.
So that's a good segue into, and in my notes, I said a 4-foot barn fan because that was an iconic piece of my Midwestern summer childhood. But apparently it works the same for house fans too. But I remember as a kid, like standing in front of this behemoth of a fan and talking into it. And so you would get this like echo reverb back, and it was like super fun to do. And I feel like not only are we seeing distortion, but when you add distortion plus echo chambers and you're getting this distorted noise back, but you're also only kind of getting back what you want to hear, that is something that's new. And I think that connects to when we talked about the fall of community, right? Or with Rebecca and the algorithms. YouTube decides what it thinks should be on my home screen right now. And for the most part, it's right. But then I have to intentionally go find other sources of news, of hobbies, whatever it is. And that's something I've had to be very intentional about, is not only looking at the side that kind of covers the way I lean, but trying to listen, albeit it's hard sometimes, to the different perspectives, because people I know genuinely believe that and feel that way, and people I grew up with. And so how can I connect with people, but to at least try to understand what they're hearing, seeing, and believing too, even though it might not align with what I feel.
So I want to argue the opposite point of something I said earlier, which is like, right, the reaction and kind of the overreaction. And there's a phrase in yoga teaching they're called vrittis, and it's just these little, this noise that is always in your head, and this is always a distraction, and it's a little bit like algorithms, right? So algorithms are in a lot of ways an autopilot, right? Like, I like this type of video, so I'm going to show more videos, so I'm going to get more likes, and I think a lot of our institutions also have been sort of running on autopilot. Like, this is the time of year that we do this story, and this is when we're going to do this. And so when you're in a period of disruption and there's distortion around you, and someone's not reacting or responding to the sort of the new world, there's two sort of choices, right? You can kind of stay in it and make that change and sort of, you know, modify it, or it's to say, you know what, I'm not going to make this choice anymore. I'm going to find something else that fits. And I think we're going to see more of that in the coming, right, 6 weeks, 6 months, kind of piece about making choice about where am I going to spend my energy, my time, and finding those things that feel they're more real. And so I will tell you, I'm professionally struggling with it, and it manifests in a bunch of different ways. But man, I don't want to do autopilot when the world is different. And so I'm struggling with sort of what that looks like. And I want to tie all of that back into, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if the world is chaotic and on fire and I need to build my resilience, there is some comfort in having things that are familiar, but I don't know that it's going to serve me well. And so I'm going to just, this is the universal term for wrestle with kind of that topic.
So I think one comment I would make to that is, in the crazy, there is a calming in the thing that you have to do. And I'm not talking about the crazy thing. I'm talking about the thing that has to happen in spite of the crazy thing, right? You have to put out a agenda packet. You have to deliver water. You have to deal with an employee who's asking about leave for whatever reason, right? Those are they exist regardless of the crazy. And I think sometimes when the crazy is particularly crazy, it can feel almost like you're not doing something you're supposed to do when you focus on the thing you're supposed to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that you're foregoing the anxiety or the frustration or whatever that comes from the chaos because you're focusing on the thing that has to be done regardless of it. So I think that's the struggle we have, right? Is to be okay with sometimes not being entranced by the chaos and falling to the normal when it exists, when you can.
You use the word normal now. So in the shadow of us filming this podcast, there was some big recent news out of Wall Street. Bob Iger is stepping down at Disney and handing over the reins to Josh D'Amaro, who I am fascinated to see this next chapter of Disney. But one of my favorites
didn't go real well the last time Bob Iger handed it off to somebody else. So I'll just point that out. But yes,
but they picked the parks guy, the guy who understands experiences and characters, and
he is straight out of Disney Central casting too. I got to say that for Josh D'Amaro.
Yeah.
Does he have like a little tiara that just sort of hovers around his head? I don't know this man.
No, but
it's not literal, but if you see pictures of him, you can see it. Like you feel it. You feel it.
If you had to think of a CEO of a company like the Walt Disney Company, he's in the dictionary. Like it's right there.
Yeah.
Cool. Can't wait. All right.
So exciting new era. Confident it will go better than the last handoff. But they put out Inside Out and Inside Out 2, which we all love. And that specific group of characters, I think, connects to all of life, including parenting, right? I know when I saw it and I'm sitting there with my teenager and I'm like, man, I'm so glad you guys have this kind of language and we can watch this movie together because it just centers things that I don't know how my parents did it. But the scene that kind of sticks for me is when anxiety's at the motherboard or the central hub and just going crazy and driving everyone else crazy too. And they all get kicked out. And I feel like that is how people are gravitating right now, right? Is this, I'm going to worry about every decision and is the stock market going to crash? Are we going to go to war? All of these things that you or I do not control and cannot influence at all. Can you actually be kind when you drive on the street? Yep. Can you push your cart down the right side of the grocery aisle? Yep.
Nope.
And so I think you're disruptive in that kind of way, aren't you? And so I think when we look at this era we're living in, and it is an era, it's not going to be quick. It's going to feel different. It's crazy to think we were prepping for COVID 6 years ago. Let that sink in for a second. 6 years ago. And if you let anxiety run the board, you will burn yourself out and you will burn everyone around you out. And so how do you balance all of those characters within yourself?
Sounds like a great question for Mike to answer.
Well, so I will say, like, my immediate reaction to hearing that was to immediately like think of the character anger and just blow my top and like overreact and just right. That's not healthy either. So, but I do think you're right. And when you said COVID was 6 years ago, there are moments when, and I talked about this at work today. Like there are moments when today's work environment feels as uncertain as COVID was 6 years ago. Like pardon my language, but like, holy shit, is this really what we're doing right now? Like
Yep.
it has that same kind of vibe and it has that same sort of anxiety. So you described anxiety. So I think it's helpful to have the characters from that show kind of in our head or like in this as a notebook in our office of like, okay, Yep, this is as crazy as it can get, and like this is what we're at, and we have other tools available to us. Uh, and then there's a part of me, and this is like the nostalgia from the movie, which is wouldn't it be great if I could just go back to being a kid and have an imaginary friend named Bing Bong, and I could have these incredible stories. And so I want to maybe like prevent or stop having to go reverting back to having imaginary friends and talking to like people that aren't there.
Isn't that what we're doing with AI right now, though?
A
I
guy,
mean,
well, if I might
really?
have to, can I rename AI to Bing Bong and then I'm all set?
You
Like
can.
I'm
You can. I think that's okay.
if there is a death of my favorite imaginary character, though, I'm going to lose my mind because that was the saddest part of that whole movie. Arna. And now I'm going to get like just like I'm going to start like getting emotional. So I'm turning it back to Phil.
Well, I joked before we were online that if I had had Inside Out 2 as a 13-year-old, I feel like I would have perhaps had a more balanced teenage life than I ended up having. And I think that's, one of the great joys of that movie series is that it puts into somewhat comic relief the real and very ever present emotions that we deal with, right? It's I think about all the time that like when I watch anxiety do her magic on that poor kid's brain, I'm like, oh my God, it's like watching myself in a mirror. It is it is a practical reality of life, right? And so to your point, Mike, yeah, I would tell you to some degree, it feels even more unstable than it did during COVID because I had more landmarks and things that I could rely on in some ways than I do today. And perhaps we all had, there was more of a, like an esprit de corps of like my community. We were all on the same page. We're going to do this. We're going to get through this. It's going to be fine. It's going to be 2 weeks. Now it's going to be a month. Now it's going to be 2 months. Now it's going to be 6 months. Now it's going to be whatever the hell it's going to be. But we're going to get through it at the end. And I don't get that same feeling lately. I don't get that same feeling lately. And I think that's what we never got the refresher. I remember getting through 2020 and everyone's like, "Oh, we got through it. Now 2021 is going to be so much better." And guys, it was so much freaking worse. 2021 for me was way worse of a year than 2020 was. And it's because we didn't have the chance to regroup. We didn't have the chance to catch our breath. It just kept going. And then it was something else. And then it was something else. And now it's now. So 6 years later, we still haven't caught our breath. We're on the frickin' treadmill. It's taken us down a path. We don't know how to get off. We don't want to fall off because we don't know where we're going to land. And so you just keep going and you keep running and you're more and more out of breath and you're more and more tired and you're more and more exasperated and you don't know and you don't know and you don't know. And so you don't fall asleep at night. You look at the ceiling and you're not present in your staff meetings because you're waiting for the bombshell to drop about whatever bad thing is coming next. And you don't sit with your kids and say, it's just great to be here right now because you're waiting for something else to happen. We have now been trained. Our brains are screwed up for a long time. We have now been trained to worry and be anxious and anticipate the thing we never anticipated happening next. And I think that's the most significant point of, I am just sad about that. I am just sad about the fact that we have not found a way to just be. And maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I will say that is one of my great challenges is to just be and not worry about what's coming tomorrow and just sit in what I have today. And maybe not ruminate on what I had before because what is that? Nostalgia is not a strategy. Is that what Corey threw out there last time? But sometimes nostalgia is sure as hell a salve for the thing that we're feeling injured by. So yeah, what a what a time to be alive.
So I feel like you were just anxiety at the board on a tilt-a-whirl. Woo! So
And it was great. Like it landed with me so perfectly. Like I'm glad you gave voice to that.
because it's real, right? I mean, I've talked to both of you several times in the past week plus, and in different scenarios and different settings, everyone around you is feeling the same way. And so I think why we decided to go from disruption, right? We're going to name it, it's happening, you can't stop it, into resilience. And then we will follow the arc into this concept of presilience. Because to Phil's point, if you never get to refill, you never actually get to build capacity. And so right now is really about resilience. And one of you had said it earlier, this isn't a push harder through it moment because you will break. I speak from experience. And so it's how do you find the power to say pause? It's not stop, that's not realistic. But to hit pause and say for an hour, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to color with my kids, or I'm going to go to a basketball game and I'm going to turn the phone off. Whatever it is. And I think that's where we should take this next. Every person's going to have a different thing. They're going to have a different stage of life with their families. But what is that thing? And I think back to my grandparents. My grandma used to sit there and do a puzzle. And she was just the most content person, like just sitting there doing a puzzle. And so how do we give ourselves permission first? Because that's part of what I hear from both of you is, well, I can't. So how do we get to an I can? And then how do you fill the time differently, right? Because you are how you spend your time. That becomes these little moments of how you spend your day become how you live your life.
So when you do that, the struggle for me, I won't speak for Mike, but the struggle for me is feeling guilty that that's what you're doing instead of something else, right? If I sit down for 30 minutes and watch a TV show with my wife, should I instead have finally gotten back to that email that has been nagging at me for a couple days? Should that have been how I spent that 30 minutes? And I think that's the struggle. That's the constancy struggle, right? That's the focus on you don't turn it off. You just keep going and the push through no matter what. I will say, unfortunately, I think it's happening. You can't take a break because if you take a break, you're missing something or you're not doing what you need to do. And if you take a break, there's a sign of weakness in that, right? And I remember during the pandemic, I worked from home for a period of time. And I had made a commitment to my staff team that I was going to send them an email every day, that I was going to keep them apprised of something, whatever had happened that day and whatever information they needed. And I remember there were days where it was 10:45 at night and I'm like, oh shit, I never sent the email. And so I ran to my desk and I sat down there and I typed out some who knows what that I don't think anyone really cared if I sent or didn't. But I felt like if I didn't do it, I was letting them all down. And that feeling hasn't gone away. And whether I'm talking about letting down my staff or my kids or my wife or my profession or my associations or my friends or my mom or whatever, I've been conditioned to feel guilty. And so that is a byproduct of anxiety. That is a byproduct of a consistent, relentless push to get shit done and just keep going and just keep going and pick it up and go back tomorrow and put your shoes on, right? Like I joke, I wrote something on LinkedIn over the weekend, and it was Lady Gaga did a cover of "Won't You Be My Neighbor," which is the theme song for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And if you haven't listened to it yet, oh my God, go to YouTube and listen to it. It is freaking unbelievable, and she is amazing. I've always been a big fan of hers, but the way she interprets music is amazing. But think about the words of that song and think about what Mr. Rogers always did. He always showed up. He always did the same thing. He took off his coat. He put on a cardigan. He sat down. He changed his outside shoes to his inside shoes, and he was present, right? He was, and as a kid who grew up with him, he was there for me, and he was consistent. Don't tell me city managers aren't that person to so many people. We are the consistent Mr. Rogers who told people that they were going to be okay, who said it's going to be fine, who said you matter and you are the one that I care about. And that's what we do every damn day. But nobody asked Mr. Rogers if he felt cared about. Nobody asked Mr. Rogers how he was doing that day. He spoke to the camera and said, "You matter. I care about you. I'm here for you. What can I do for you?" That's what we are. And it's tiring. It's really tiring.
So I'm struck with a couple of things. So number one, I feel like I have to get a work cardigan and maybe some work shoes that I swap. Like I go to work and I'll put on some sort of a crazy sweater. But that this concept of being the consistent presence is probably accurate, right? Like if the world's spinning and you've got one thing that's consistent, it probably feels super comforting. And so I have to I got to think about that a little bit more in terms of what the role is, because the flip side of that is we have moved away from government being the vending machine that any customer can come in and demand a service or demand an offering, and they just kind of pick and choose. But we are often the common address or the common link between different parts of the communities. And, closed circuit to the podcast, we're going to be doing a community conversation on immigration enforcement in Minnesota. And I think a traditional manager would say, oh, well, we'll just have a town hall. We'll have a microphone right in front of the room and we'll just let people yell at us for 3 hours. That doesn't work anymore. Nobody wants to listen to 300 people yell for 3 hours. But so one of the approaches and strategies that we're going to employ is like small groups, knees 8 inches apart from one another, small, intimate, and a simple question. And getting people to discuss and to open dialogue so people maybe who from different backgrounds can listen and hear from one another, because we can create space and time for people to talk, safe spots, that it's so like that consistency in creating that sort of space. So I have to kind of think about that Mr. Rogers concept. I might actually show up in a cardigan when I do that. But the other thing that I want to go back to, if we can, for just a second, is something Phil said. Like, we didn't learn the lessons from COVID because we didn't have time to, and Corey, you said this too, right? We didn't have time to refill. We didn't have time to rebuild that capacity. And I wonder to what extent, like, that might be one of the elements of resilience is like, okay, we survived a global pandemic largely successfully, never celebrated, never recognized what went into surviving that and coming out on the other side. And I think we maybe missed an element of recognition, or at least even capturing some of the learnings about, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? That could help us in the next thing. Because we're like, guess what? We're in the next thing and we never learned the lessons.
So, Phil, I want to go back to kind of the big casserole of expectations you talked about. Who or how did we get to this place where that's just the way it is, right? And without questioning why. We've talked about this over the course of disruption. I think we're at this inflection point. You have generally Gen X and millennials coming into the senior leadership positions kind of across the board in government, not exclusively, but I would say predominantly. And we grew up in a different world than the generations that we've inherited this profession, just as we are going to transition the profession to our Gen Z friends, like in our last episode. But why can't we give ourselves permission to turn it off? And I don't know if it's generational. I don't know if it's cultural. I don't know if it's industry specific. Because, growing up, my mom was in healthcare, my sister's in healthcare. I promise you, they turn it off when they get home. And that may not be true for physicians, the same as it is in some support functions. But why did that become the norm? And then the second part of it is it's not working, by the way. And so how do we create permission to change it?
So I don't know the answer to the second question, and I don't know the answer to the first question, but I can speak for my own self in that sense of why do we do it? It's because we hope we can make it better. And we don't think that the price of that is too high yet. And maybe it'll get to that point, but so far we still have more to give. We still have more hope that it can be better tomorrow than it is today. And again, I'll speak for myself. I don't believe that I have the ability solely to get that done, not by a long shot. But if I can prop up the people who I think can along with me, and to seek out a pathway of, look, we're going to get this right. We're going to do it better. We're going to try. Then even if we don't succeed, we still succeeded because we didn't stop trying. And I think that for me at least is the thing that maybe drives me too hard in that direction. It drives me to stop, to not say no, or to not ask whether I should. But if you've reached out to me, how do I not grab the hand and say, okay, I'll go with you. We'll try to find a path forward. And I do think that's a unique reality of our generation in some way, because I've seen it in so many of us where we we're not apathetic to the problem. We're not apathetic to the people who are struggling with the problem. We had to make do. We had to figure it out when we were kids. And so, damn it, we're going to figure it out now, whether it kills us in the process. And I think that's the problem, right? Like if you think about watching The Goonies, I loved that movie when I was a kid, right? Loved it. Those kids never stopped trying. They just kept going. They had a mission and they were going to succeed. And I feel like that is we're flag carriers, right? We're going to lead you through it. We're going to get there. We're going to get to the end. We're going to make it happen. That was the message of virtually every 1980s movie. Whether you're talking about Indiana Jones or you're talking about the Brat Pack movies or whatever, there was always a person who was the cheerleader who was going to get you there. And damn it, we're going to make this happen. And it's going to be great. And here we are in roles that we can do that to a certain degree. And will we walk ourselves off of a cliff? Maybe.
I don't think it's so much as walking off of a cliff, because I'm too much. I believe it or not, despite my sort of jaded, caustic Gen X sort of attitude, I actually do think we matter in the universe and we matter in the profession. And so I think one of the things that I have kind of wrestled with, again, this is a real, like a weekly conversation in my own head, is as a profession, You're right. Gen Xers are predominantly the ones in leadership roles in organizations. Millennials to some extent. And then, but we are the voices that we hear from or that get highlighted tend to be silent generation folks, the few that are remaining, or older boomers who have literally no context for what we're facing. Yet they get, right, awards and they get recognized and they get, key spots in our, publications that we're being asked to read. And I'm like, that isn't relevant anymore because it is fundamentally a different world. And so I'm kind of in this phase of like, okay, right, let's break that. And then ultimately the group behind us gets to remake it in a way that serves them. And so, right, maybe, just maybe this is the unraveling and just have to build a little bit of resilience to kind of push it, make the final push for us to actually break this thing so we can make something better. And maybe that's what our generation has been trained to do.
So that's what we're doing right now,
Yep.
sitting here having this conversation. And I think you're not wrong. We all do this, right? We look to the leader who was and have the expectation that they have the answer. What did we say to the leaders that will be in our last episode? We don't have the answer.
Right.
You can look up to us all you want, but we're winging it too, just like you are. And I think if there's there has to be some humility in this too. And I think the part that I totally am on board with you on is that I'm not sure that we always see that humility of maybe I didn't know best, but can I help you understand the things that I wish I had known, instead of I knew best, just do it this way and you'll be fine. Right? That doesn't work. That is not who we are anymore, and it isn't practical. It's not like we're just trying to figure out how to repave that street better. We're trying to figure out how to hold together the foundations of democracy. Nobody has had to do that in a long time. So there's no book, and you can look to the lessons of the past, and they're not going to be as relevant as we want them to be. And yet, nostalgia is not a strategy. Nostalgia is the strategy we seek. If we look to the past, we'll know how to get to the future. I'm not sure about that.
But speaking of the past, like when you talked about the Brat Pack movies, like my mind went right to the Breakfast Club when they're all in the library, right? And the one thing that we saw through everything was that it was always a group kind of misfits that figured it out together.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're going to do something, I think that's what we're going to do. And Mike, to your point, I think community is going to get formed differently now out of necessity. And that's the opportunity right now, because just working harder, all those things, you will eventually break. And that's not what's good for anyone.
All right. So we've gone all over the board here. So I'm going to try to weave us home. Corey, did we cover all of your introductory items in your grand opening? I lost track. There were so many good quirky things in there. What did we miss?
So we missed surgical tape. And I'm going to make
let's
Phil
go
tell
there.
his story too. But so as I was putting...
I'm going to let you start, but I need to go around where I'm sitting right now and plug my computer in before it dies, because I realized I didn't do that. But don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just
we'll
plugging my
pause
computer.
and just chop this out while you go do it. It's a Mike Sable moment if there ever was one. Have you been following the Epstein stuff, Mike? It's fascinating. All right. Are you better, Phil? Everyone's mic'd or muted.
It's not charging, but I'm good. It's saying it's charging, so we should be fine.
All
Sorry.
right.
I'm back. Here I am. Can't wait to talk about Epstein. Oh, wait. No, we're not talking about
And that's all going to get edited out. Isn't that great? All right.
Please.
So the last one is surgical tape. And again, this perfectly fits because what a band of misfit topics. And I have no idea why I even thought about this other than like adhesive tape. And Jagger's got a little hand wound right now, so we're dealing with that. But it reminded me of some reason of after I had my C-section. It's a big wound. It's actually big surgery. They pack you up and tape you up. And I remember the charge nurse
It's a
saying,
huge surgery. I don't think you should undersell how freaking dramatic that surgery is, and kudos to you for living through it, because I'd be dead. I just want to point that out for the record. Yes.
yeah, I survived. Almost. It was, yeah, that's a whole different story. But the nurse that afternoon gave me a choice. She's like, well, we need to get all the packing off. So you can either go take a nice long shower and slowly rip the tape off, or we can do it, but we're probably going to take your skin with. And so I feel like that in some ways is symbolic for how change feels right now. It's like, do I want the slow, painful version, or do I just want to get it over with? And nobody knows the right answer right now.
Nobody, I just laugh because it would literally depend on the moment of like, should we do this carefully and methodically and build a coalition and do these things, or should we just get on with it? Like, I feel like the answer is the deliberate, the patient, the kind of the grinding it out. But God, I just want it to be over sometimes. So this is the transition. So we kind of talked about this at the beginning. Adhesive tape has also changed. Phil, you're living this every day right now. What's your companion story to adhesive tape?
You are one of the most capable redirectors of anyone I've ever met in my life. All right, I'll tell the story. I told the story before we were online. Everybody knows I'm a diabetic. We had this conversation several episodes ago, but something has changed in the last 6 weeks, to the point at which for the last 15 or 16 years, I have been wearing something. I have a device that is physically adhered to my body in some way, shape, or form. Something has changed with the adhesive, to the point at which I have these 2 pieces of equipment, an insulin pump that I change every 2.5 days, and a glucose meter that I change every 10 days, that have absolutely destroyed my skin. And I have only so many places that I can actually physically place these devices, because they're easy to knock off. They're uncomfortable if you put them in a spot that you have to sit or lay or whatever. And so I've got 3-4 spots total, both of my arms and kind of the sides of my torso. The last 6 weeks, I have ripped skin off in a way that I have never seen happen before. I have bled through shirts. I have found myself in a situation where I am in so much physical pain that I have a real hard time just being comfortable. So you figure it out, right? I have no choices. I have to wear these things. These things are part of my anatomy at this point. And so you do the best you can. You avoid the spot that you just ripped the skin off of, and you put it in a different spot, and you hope it's going to work, and you hope it's not going to be as bad. And you get this skin protector thing that you stick on your skin, and you hope that's going to help, and it doesn't. And so then you try to rotate as best as you can, but everything's got to be close together, so you can't really rotate. So what am I in? I'm in a constant state of saying, I just have to deal with it. The alternative isn't good. The alternative is I'm sick, or my skin hurts. Am I terminally sick because I don't pay attention to what's going on if I don't have these pieces of equipment stuck to me? Or am I temporarily uncomfortable because the skin is going to grow back eventually and scar probably, and that's just my reality. But I always am going to select the part that's uncomfortable in the short term so that I don't have to take that long-term option, because the long-term option you don't get to come back from. So isn't that an aspect of what we're working our way through, right? Are we saying we're gonna put up with this short-term thing, and maybe the short-term thing's not that long. It's been 6 weeks for me. That's a long time to have skin ripping off of your body. Sorry, I don't know how else to say it. Right? What's the choice? The choice is not a choice. And so I think that is really perhaps indicative of the scenario that we're working our way through right now, which is we're just going to have to do the damn best we can and recognize that sometimes it's not going to feel good.
Well, as the king of redirection, that sort of feels like the really good way to end on that one, because I do think you're right. And I do think it does introduce a couple of things for us to kind of talk about is, okay, so how do we build a little bit more resilient skills? How do we build what we're calling presilience, right? These steps that we can take. So when the thing is hard, we're ready for the thing. And it's not toughness, but it's the preparation and the skills and tools to overcome whatever gets thrown our way. So we'll be tackling those questions next. Corey, you set this up perfectly. What did we miss? What do we have to preview?
So I think the important part is, well, this episode feels heavy, right? We came off of disruption. Those were very specialized topic areas. Resilience is a little more umbrella-like. I think it's important that we have the conversation in public about the fact that it's hard and that maybe it's going to be hard tomorrow too, right? Pretty sure it might be. But that there are ways, and that's where we head next, to really work on resilience, because the ideology, the management ideology we inherited was, well, if you're just loyal and you work harder, right? There was a very prescriptive approach to the workforce. And that's just not true at this point. And so I think we're going to take our best effort to help our colleagues, our profession, and those coming up in it too, to not make the same mistakes that we did learn the hard way on, and hopefully to make their on-ramp a little smoother, because change is among us. It's not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. But if we can learn how to be adaptable and resilient, and that may also mean saying no to stuff and how to do that in a really thoughtful way, I think that's where our next couple episodes go. And we have some really great guests lined up to have those conversations with us. Am I stopping? Is that
No,
the
Phil.
end?
I feel like Mike is going to have the last word on this episode, because I feel
should.
like he hasn't had that in a bit.
I always get the last word.
Never, ever, ever.
Well, okay, so Corey, thank you for framing this up and also for kind of organizing the thoughts on this. I appreciate kind of how this is coming together, despite it being hard to talk about personally and professionally. So you gave me a place to be authentic at the end of the day. And Phil, I just there was so many, like, you gave me goosebumps today a couple of times that I really appreciate it.
It
And
was all
actually,
on accident.
well, accident or not, I have to actually think about the things that we talked about in a different way, which is sort of the point of the podcast. So if you've stayed with us this long, thank you. We're really grateful for the listenership. We're grateful for your feedback, for likes and subscribes and all of the things that go into sort of putting this together. We feel like we're offering something of value. So if you think that we are, please let us know and share with us. And we will see you again next week. Thanks, everybody.